Welcome to State of Ed, a podcast about education inside the classroom and out. My name is Marc.
And I'm Nick Simone.
How are you today, Nick?
Really excited for our guest. How are you?
Also very excited because we have an exceptional and an accomplished educator with us, Dr. Rachel Edoho-Eket. She currently serves as an elementary school principal, and she's an adjunct professor at McDaniel College and author of 2 best-selling books, The Principal's Journey and Relational Intelligence. Additionally, Dr. Edoho-Eket is a TEDx speaker, president of the Maryland Association of Elementary School Principals, and was recently named one of the top 100 influencers in education. She has so many incredible achievements. There is so much to discuss. Dr. Edoho-Eket, welcome to State of Ed Podcast.
Thank you so much, Marc and Nick, for having me. You make me sound really good, so thank you for that.
Oh, you do that. You do that pretty well. This is an impressive resume already. Very excited.
Thank you.
So you've served in so many different roles in education so far, and I have no doubt that you are just getting warmed up in your career. Now that you are the principal of an elementary school, a very successful elementary school, National Blue Ribbon School, when you look back at the journey so far, what is one leadership lesson that you wish that every aspiring principal kind of understood, or perhaps you wish that you understood before stepping into the role?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, that's a great question. And I'm someone that never saw myself in the role of a principal. And that's because I come from a family of educators who all taught in the classroom and retired after 30 years. So one of the hangups that I think I had about school leadership was my perception of the role of a principal and a leader. And I thought that leaders had to be perfect. I thought that principals were all knowing, sitting at like the top of a perch, looking down on the school and making sure that everything was running great. And it wasn't until I had a wonderful mentor who kind of took the veil off a little bit and showed me kind of behind the scenes. And that's when I realized, wait a minute, principals don't have all the answers. Assistant principals don't know everything. We're all learning. We're all growing. We all have a set of skills that are important for the role, but ultimately we're learners just like everyone else in the building. And that helped me to see that I could be in the role of a school leader one day, and that I too was capable of doing the job well. So I would say when I talk with aspiring leaders, I tell them you don't have to have it all together. You don't have to have or think that principals have it all together, because we don't. And that's not a secret. That's the truth. We're all learning and we're all growing. So I think if you're someone who is interested in learning and growing, then you can be a great leader.
Would you like to give a shout out to that mentor?
Yes, I have several, but the one who really supported my journey in this leg was Heidi Balter. Also, several other principals who along the way gave me leadership opportunities. Robert Bruce, who still is one of my favorite principals. He's now my principal colleague. He hired me to open a new school in 2007, and he has been in leadership now for 48 years. Really incredible.
Wow.
Yes. He's been in our district a long time. And he's just a wonderful leader, and I think he's really good at building up other leaders. So is Mrs. Balter and so many other wonderful principals that I've had over the years.
Wow.
He's probably forgotten more about leadership than I'll ever know.
No. In fact, I saw him today at our principals meeting, and I told him, Bob, one day I aspire to be like you, but I don't have 48 years to give. That will not be my story, but I love that for him.
You said you're from a family of educators?
Yes.
So how early on in your life did you know you wanted to be a teacher and an educator?
I knew very early on that I wanted to be a teacher. I was one of the kids that would line up all of my dolls, and I would use my grandmother's attendance and grade book, and I would take attendance in my room, and I was grading assignments that didn't exist. I had it all figured out. I was the kid that was told I talked too much because I was always saying something in class. I was very directive, I would say. I'm not going to say bossy, because that's not what we call women leaders anymore, right? We were very confident. And so when I was growing up, one of the comments my teachers used to make to me was, Rachel, you are not the teacher. I want to remind you of that. I'm the teacher. So I thought, boy, when I get my own classroom one day, I get to be the teacher, and I get to do what my awesome teachers get to do every day. So I was always inspired by my grandmother, by my aunt, by just so many people in my family. And then I just loved all of my teachers, loved all of my administrators. I love school. So I know I always wanted to be a part of elementary school in that process.
That's great to hear.
That's amazing. My parents were both educators, and my grandparents were educators as well. So when I'm
love
hearing
it.
you tell that story, I have a lot of flashbacks to the little chalkboard that we had in our basement and playing teacher. And then as I got older, swearing that I would never do it because we don't need a third generation of educators. So I really pushed back hard against that. And then obviously that didn't really work out that well because here I am at year 31. But that was at least the original intention. I know Nick was kind of the opposite. Didn't come from a family of educators, but knew early on. And I don't want to speak for you, Nick, but I know that you early on knew that you wanted to be an educator.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I always wonder, doctor, I mean, it's like, do you think the greatest teachers are the ones that knew early on and were, almost like we're born that way? Or do you feel like you really can still mold people into being transformative teachers?
I think both. I think if you have a desire to help kids, to help students, to help families, and to help, your colleagues, then it really doesn't matter where you're coming from. We need great teachers. We need great people to be great teachers. And I think, I remember that perception of like when people say, you were born to teach, I can just tell. And I love hearing that. But at the same time, like you, Nick, if you didn't come from a family of educators and you still have that fire, then that's amazing. You may have been inspired by great teachers that you had. And I think that's beautiful. I was inspired, of course, by my own family members, but also my wonderful teachers. So I think we just need great people.
Yes.
Couldn't agree with that more. In your book, Relational Intelligence, you make a strong argument that, relationships are really like the engine of schools, of great schools. So in an era that we're currently in, where leaders feel almost in many cases buried by compliance, by data, by mandates, how does a principal prioritize relationships without letting everything else fall apart?
Yeah, this is a really great question because it is extremely hard to be a school leader right now. And I think it's very hard to be a teacher right now as well, to be a staff member, to be a paraeducator, support staff. And so what I like to think of the relationship piece is that's at the core in the center. You really cannot move anything without relationships. And you're right, we have a lot of mandates. We have a lot of things that are required of us. But what I've learned is it is much more valuable to slow down and take the time to interact with the people that we're serving before we ask them to do anything, before we demand that they do anything. Because, just think about people in your life. If you don't have a relationship with someone and they're asking you to give your time, to give your energy to something, you're much less likely to do it, and to do it with, with the heart where you want to do it. And when you have a relationship with your colleagues, when you have a real relationship with the people that you're serving, it just makes it a little bit easier because we are all pushed to do so many different things every single day, many out of our comfort zones. Sometimes things we definitely do not want to do and may not even agree with. But if you know that you have a good relationship with your administrative team, if you know that they have your back, if you know that you can count on them to have some honest conversations, then it makes the job that much easier. And so part of our purpose of writing the book, Dr. Johnson and I thought about, was principals don't always get to control all of the policies that are happening. We don't get to control all of the budgets that are happening. We don't get to control some of those decisions that really impact our schools. So what is in our locus of control? And what's in our control is how we treat people. It's how we support people. It's how we interact with people in a way that makes them want to come back to work the next day. Because if we're honest with ourselves, it's hard. This is a hard job. There's wonderful things about it. We love our students. We love serving. But there's also challenges that are very real. And so anything that we can do as an administrators and administrative teams to support teachers and staff, we should be doing it.
So what's the secret to engendering trust? What's your
Well,
secret?
yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And I think one of the things is consistency. So we talk about that. You don't want to be someone who's coming into a building one day, one way, and then turn around a couple hours later and you're different. That's really hard for people to manage around, that inconsistency. And so I think number one is consistency. We want to show up in a positive way as much as possible. We want to just be present with people. So being on the ground with them, making sure that they know you understand what the challenges are, and supporting and trying to make things better. Communication is another way to build trust. And we talk a lot about communication in the book, that an email is not always going to suffice. There are going to be times when you're going to have to walk down to a teacher and have a real conversation with them beyond, how are you? I'm fine, right? We have to get deeper than that, because these are the people who we have entrusted to be with children. And children are the most important people on earth. And so our jobs are that much more important because we're taking care of other people's kids. And so we have to then, as administrators, take care of not only ourselves, but the people we are entrusted to care for. So I think consistency is one way, communication is another way, and being present is a third way to build trust with people.
I love that. Thank you.
I know Marc well enough to know you've given him like 7 different sound bites that he can't wait to put up, because that was a brilliant.
Good.
I know him. I can probably guess them. Out of all of your incredible honors here, I have to say, top 100 influencers in education has to be something that made your family incredibly proud.
Totally shocked.
But real. So what, 2-part question. What do you think got you on the list? And what is it that you would love to be able to influence in education?
Yeah. So one, I don't know what got me on the list, to be completely honest with you. There are so many people that I admire that are a part of this district administration top 100 list. And I will say, when I started making more of a public presence, a big part of my story is just talking about my journey as a new principal during COVID-19. And
Wow.
some of the lessons that I learned after almost quitting the field as a
Picked a
new
great time to
principal.
start.
Oh yeah, no better time than COVID. And also talking about my journey coming from a kindergarten classroom to administration. So I went from kindergarten to AP. And so that journey in of itself is a little bit different coming out of early childhood. I'm an early childhood certified teacher first. That is my first love, is early childhood. And you don't have that many principals coming with that profile. So I think that also helps, because I talk about different topics that have impacted me and are still very influential in my leadership. And then third, I really like to talk about wellness and joy and ways that we can maintain ourselves. And I think that's a universal message, because all of us, at one point or another, if you haven't experienced burnout before, then it may be in the future. And so I try to be forward thinking about some of the issues that educators are facing. So I would say part of the influence comes from just being around amazing educators and learning from other leaders and sharing and being thought partners in that process. Now, a lot of my work is around AI and thinking about how schools can be ethically able to share more about what students should do and how we can leverage AI in a way that is positive, even on the elementary level, so that by the time the students get to middle and high school, they're able to use AI in a way that helps them co-create things, not just consume information, but produce. So that's something that I'm also interested in. I don't know if I answered your question, but I would say part of the influence, I think, is the sharing of ideas. And that's really important to me as a lifelong learner. I always am interested in what's coming next and how we can best prepare the field of education.
Just listening to you and, of course, hearing so many wonderful things, I think what got you on the list is, in addition to being so incredibly intelligent and knowledgeable, but you're genuine and you're passionate. I think those are probably, and I think that what teachers are looking for, I think, in leaders are those two things. Everybody has a different style, like you said. It's okay to be tougher than other leaders, but just be genuine and be passionate about what you're doing. And that just comes through very quickly when you're speaking with
Thank you. I appreciate that, Nick.
Since you mentioned AI, I mean, how do we not at least talk about it a little bit. Clearly, we are just figuring things out. This is obviously the dawn of something massive that we're in just getting into. What are your early thoughts about that, and answering the very questions that you were just raising in terms of your role in trying to make heads or tails as an instructional leader in an age of early AI?
Well, I think this is interesting because I was having a great conversation over the summertime about calculators and about actually dissertation writing. So the reason why we started the conversation was because we were talking about dissertations, and my colleague was saying he completed his dissertation in the 70s. And at that time, everything was handwritten in terms of the statistics and the models that we use when you are analyzing the data. Meanwhile, I said, oh, wait, I used a computer program to help me with my statistics when I was doing my dissertation. And we had a great conversation around just think about the calculator. When he was coming up, he said people were saying you should not use calculators. You must do things by hand. That's how we know that you have learned and understand. Now, no one bristles at the use of a calculator because a calculator is a part of our lives. We have calculators on our phones. We have calculators in our cars. We have calculators everywhere, right? We have GPS systems. So I think AI and just the technology as it has evolved has always been in some sort of iteration before. And I like to use that example of calculators because no one bats an eye at calculators and says that you're cheating when you use a calculator. It is just a tool that we use. And I think what we should be doing now is thinking of AI as a tool, not a way to replace people, but as a tool to help make other processes faster or more accurate. And so I think when we're having a conversation around AI, it's complex because it involves staff, students, and families. And sometimes there are different priorities amongst those three groups. For instance, when I hear from parents about concerns about AI, they talk about privacy. Student data,
Right.
How is it being used? And that's excellent questions. We need to consider those. When I talk with students, they want to know what can I make with AI and what can I research and, what can I create? And I think that's amazing. When I talk with the adults, there's different comfort levels with AI. There is people who are going to jump in and say, here's something that I made that I want to share. There's people that are kind of in the middle that might say, well, I've never tried this before, but I'm open to it. And then there are other people who are more traditional that say, I really don't like the direction that it could go in, and I'm uncomfortable with it. And so I think we have to think about all of the stakeholders and really make sure we're intentional about how we're communicating what we're doing. Number one, what are the privacy safeguards in place? How are we teaching digital citizenship to children so that they understand on the elementary level what is appropriate, what is ethical, and how do we use it in a way that is appropriate so that by the time they get through high school and college and beyond, they have a great foundation. So that's something that I'm thinking about too. And then with staff, professional learning. What do our teachers need? And it can't be a one size fits all for the reason I just said. There are people who are on different parts of the spectrum with their understanding of technology and AI. And so we need differentiated trainings and supports for our staff. And not only that, how does our staff really co-create things with kids, right? Because then that turns into what are some curriculum conversations we need to have? Do we need to change assessments? There's just a lot. There's a lot of things to consider. And I get excited about those things because I think we have the potential to do some great work, but it can't be a free-for-all. That's what I like to say. You can't just throw technology at people and expect something to happen. We have to have some guidance in place.
Yeah, what you're describing sounds a lot like when you drop the pebble into the pond and you get the ripples, right? Except the
Yes.
pebble is the size of like Maryland, and the ripples are tsunamis, because that's essentially what we're talking about technologically. I loved everything that you said, and it speaks to, I think, a lot of the issues that educators are experiencing in their own individual pockets, in their own specific environments, in their school districts, in their school buildings, and sometimes even their department offices or their kitchen tables. And I think one of the other obstacles that we're facing systemically is that a lot of the folks who are in the positions of authority, who have the ability to execute or provide a plan, have been out of the classroom for a significant period of time, where they have kind of missed this technological wave, let alone forget about AI, but they've missed like maybe the wave before that and maybe even the wave before that. And that puts them in a position of great difficulty to be able to meet this particular moment if they're not going to be wide open in allowing all people to the table to help craft the solution. And I think it goes back to, in some places, people are welcome to the table, and in other places, people are not, because there's that pyramid, there's that hierarchical structure. And so that's why I feel like we are starting to see pockets of really wonderful things. You know, like you, I follow a lot of really talented folks across the country and see what they're up to. We met at FETC, so you get to see even more brilliant people and what they're doing. So it's happening in pockets. The question is like, when do we reach what Malcolm Gladwell called like the tipping point and get to something that has sort of systemic impact?
Yeah, I agree, Mark. And I think we are reaching that precipice, but it does make a difference who's at the table. And I think we need everyone at the table, right? We need the stakeholders there because that is a check and balance. And we need check and balances during this time because there is so much new territory to cover. And so we need parents at the table. We need teachers at the table so that we can hear directly from the people who are going to be implementing it. What are their needs? We need a student or two at the table so that we can hear from a child's perspective. You know, I love listening to kids because I always learn something new. Every day I say at Waterloo, I learn something new every single day. And oftentimes it comes from the students when I'm in conversation with them because they're so insightful. And so it is important to have students at the table. It's important to have school leaders at the table because we are the intersection between the general community, central office, and what's happening on the ground. So we hear from a lot of different stakeholders with a lot of different opinions. It's important for school leaders to be at the table as well, because on the flip side, sometimes we are investigating situations involving technology. We are investigating or trying to resolve situations. And so that's another part that comes along with technology and student use that isn't going anywhere either. So it is important that we have everyone at the table as we are making decisions that are informed. Another thing that our district does really well is with AI, we didn't make an AI policy because policies take a long time to get together, to implement, and to change. So what we have is called AI guidance or guidelines. And then they can change, they're malleable, they can evolve over time without having to take the formal process of policy, because policy just is a longer process.
That's so smart. Do you find that that educators that you work with are eager to find particular tools, like specific tools or specific apps, as opposed to thinking about sort of the mindset or the philosophy or the intentionality of using the tool in the first place?
I think it depends on the person, to be honest. I know that's not a specific answer, but I do think there's a level of eagerness among some staff to jump on and adopt. And then there are other staff who are like, wait a minute, let me look at the full picture and make an informed decision. So I think you can really have a spectrum. And I think that's where the training comes into play, because it's good to have a framework of how do you evaluate a tool. What goes into that evaluation? Some of the tools that our district use, we no longer use anymore because they're not compliant with like the vision standards. So if you're a student who has a specific vision need, if you're not meeting that, we can't use those anymore. So some of the apps we've had to do away with simply because they're not meeting minimum standards of the framework. So those are things that when we're talking with our staff, hey, these are some things that need to be compliant. And if they're not compliant, we cannot use them.
It's funny that you say that. You just gave me a flashback to the days when we used to have textbook adoption periods. We used to get like the boxes and boxes and boxes of all the supplementary materials and so on. And then the teachers would go through all the different textbooks and all the supplementary materials or supplemental materials, excuse me. And then we'd have to fill out like these rating sheets, what we liked and what we didn't like. And I feel like with technology, we haven't done that in a lot of cases. It's
until
just like,
later.
Hey, everybody, look on your desktop and there's a new button and push that. And that's your new whatever it is. And it kind of gets vetted for us. But I think we're missing that critical piece in some cases.
Yeah. And I think, again, it comes down to teacher voice and making sure that everything is not always top down for staff, that we have teachers have opportunities to provide input and feedback. That's really important for long-term buy-in, especially with technology or things where it can feel sometimes polarizing depending on your comfort level. And I want to be clear. Sometimes people say, oh, it's age. It has nothing to do with age. It has nothing to do with years in the classroom. It has nothing to do with that. It truly is a willingness and openness, to learn, and not necessarily a non-willingness. It may just be more cautious, right? There are real concerns with privacy. There are real concerns with screen time. These are real valid concerns that need to be addressed.
And we're doing it while the technology is evolving. I think
Correct. That's the challenge.
That's the challenge. And that's why I think the work that you're doing is so impactful, because while this is happening, our kids don't have time to wait, and we could always develop relationships with them. And I think that's at the core of what you believe in.
Yes. And that doesn't require any money, right?
Exactly.
That just requires authentic relationships and time. It requires time.
You mentioned that you made this tremendous leap from the classroom as a kindergarten teacher to a building administrator. And I'll just share my own personal experience. And I don't know if this echoes in your personal experience, but those opening days, there was a lot of imposter syndrome-ish kind of feelings, because I remember vividly a counselor, or I think it was a clinician, came into my office, like literally day one, with a serious case and presented this whole thing. And then said, okay, so what do you want to do? And I'm like, I really want you to ask somebody who knows what's going on and how to better handle the situation is really what I wanted to say. But then I just started to slowly ask questions and somehow made my way through that scenario. But that's when I realized, like, okay, I had done my previous job really, really well, I guess. And so they thought it would be a good fit for this particular job. But I had yet to develop any of the real skills that I needed. I took the coursework, but the coursework is theoretical. And when you're in the seat, it becomes very practical very, very quickly. So can you just kind of share what it was like? Because there are some folks out there who maybe want to make that leap, but are afraid of that imposter syndrome or of those feelings like, but I don't know what that person who I see who's been in this seat for 15, 20 years knows. So therefore I'm not a candidate.
Right. I think you said it perfectly. I think the skills that you were successful in your previous role may not be the exact same skills that you're going to need to be successful in your next role. And so it does take time to develop some of the new skills. So yes, me coming out of kindergarten, I had a lot of gaps. I knew kindergarten very well, like the back of my hand. But the assistant principalship was something I had to learn. So there are some foundational skills that I have that are strong. Communication, following through, following up, being a squeaky wheel. Those are all things that I used well in my role as an AP. But you're right, there's such a large gap of skills when you are new to a position. And actually, when I transitioned from my assistant principalship to my principalship, that was a whole nother set of skills that I had to learn. And I laugh about that a lot, because as an assistant principal, I developed some habits. And some of those habits were things like, don't ask me. I'm not the principal. Go ask her. Go ask Kathy, right? And my principal is amazing. She's still one of my great mentors. She was a beloved community member. I call her the queen of my school. She was principal for 13 years at my school.
That's a long
and
time.
So I came right after her, and I was really good at deferring, like, oh, Kathy. And then when I became the principal and someone asked me a question, I was like, oh, it's me. Keck is gone, right? So that was something I had to learn, that, like, oh, wait, you're coming to me and you are expecting an answer.
That's right.
And if I didn't know the answer, I need to know who to go to find the answer. So what I tell leaders now is, you don't have to have all the answers, but you better know who to ask.
Right.
You better be able to evaluate that answer and to provide it in a timely manner. That's half of the job. That's what it is. You have to have a relationship with people across everywhere. And another skill is that advocacy. How do you balance that advocacy with central office, knowing that you're going to also need partnership there too? So it's a fine line, and those are skills you have to develop. And you don't want to, misuse your relationships, right? So we have to maintain trust across a lot of people. And that's what actually excites me about the role, one of the challenges of the role. But that's, to me, what makes it very unique is that we have to, as school leaders, we have to maintain trust with our students, our community members, our parents, our staff, our superintendent, our central office mates. It's a lot, but I love it. I really do. It's fun.
That's why they make wine, I think.
I don't drink wine, but I've heard, yes,
Oh,
that's
okay.
one
Well,
we use.
take it from me.
Yeah.
It's so obvious how passionate you are about the job, you know, and your dedication to the kids and the staff and the community. If I could just ask one last question, though, I'm always curious, like elementary school, yours is kindergarten until what grade approximately?
It's preschool till fifth
Oh,
grade.
preschool to
Yes, fifth grade.
fifth grades. If you could like wave a magic wand and like just change one obstacle that gets in the way of doing the work that you want to do at that level, is there one thing you could wish for that you would put at the top of your list?
I mean, that's a big question because I think there's so many different things. I don't know if a magic wand would certainly fix it, but I think that we need to have programming that is suitable for all students. And I think sometimes what happens is we have a diverse group of students with diverse needs. And I can't say we always have everything that we need to meet all of their needs in the way they need to be met. So yes, if I had one magic wand, I would ask for more staffing. I would ask for more diverse programming. I would ask for more materials for our neurodivergent students. I would ask for a lot of different things so that each one of our students really is successful in our environment. Because right now, I think there are some gaps that we can fill, that we can do better with meeting more of the needs across our schools. I really believe that. I think we can do a better job with that. All schools can do that.
Oh, absolutely. A great answer.
Dr. Edoho-Eket, where could our listeners find you if they want to learn more about you and the work that you're doing?
Well, first of all, Marc and Nick, thank you so much for having me. This was a great conversation. It was a nice way to end my day. So I can be easiest reached at www.rachaeledoho-eket.com. This is my first and last name. I'm also on Instagram at Rachel Edoho-Eket. I'm on Twitter at Rachel Edoho-Eket, and then I'm on LinkedIn at Dr. Rachel Edoho-Eket. So those are the easiest ways, and I love connecting with new people and just continuing to learn from what everyone else is doing and just incorporating the best of what we're all doing.
Thank you. This was such a genuine pleasure for us. It's so always wonderful to know that there are extraordinary people out there doing this work. And for us to have the opportunity to interact with them in any way, shape, or form is just one of the great pleasures of doing this podcast and getting to meet wonderful people like yourself. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm excited.
Thank you very much. I think you're going to be on many more up-and-coming lists in education in the future. You have a lot of career left to make a significant impact. So thank you very much.
Thank you.